Welcome to the Canadian Blind Hockey Podcast. Hey there, blind hockey fans, and welcome to episode 4 of the Canadian Blind Hockey Podcast. I'm your host, Nico Cardarelli, and during the first 3 episodes of the podcast, we've had the pleasure of featuring many of the participants within the Canadian blind hockey community. And we've done feature episodes so far on the Canadian national blind hockey team, the children and youth programming around the country, and of course, the growing women's blind hockey programs. This week's episode, we're going to switch gears a little bit, and we're going to visit with individuals whose hockey backgrounds are rooted in traditional hockey, but who have become valuable members of the Canadian blind hockey community in a variety of ways. But first, before we introduce our guests, for this week's episode, I am very pleased to welcome my co-host, the founder of the new Central Alberta Bullseye blind hockey program, Dustin Butterfield. Dustin, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks a lot, Nico. How are you doing today?
Oh, everything's great. I am psyched to have you on the show. You're one of my favorite guys when we have events going on just to see and catch up with. And of course, as I've made it very public, that's my favorite team jersey in the country right now, the Central Alberta Bullseye blind hockey program. And of course, with you being the founder, we want to congratulate you and thank you for all the hard work you're doing.
Well, thank you, Nico. That's much appreciated. It's been quite a journey along the way. So I'm happy to be here to help you out today.
We're thrilled to have you as the co-host for today's show, and we want to thank you for that as well. But you've got an interesting story because you're relatively new to the blind hockey community, but yet here you are as a program founder. I guess I'm curious, how did you learn about the sport? When did you start participating in blind hockey events? And what were some of your initial experiences like?
Yeah, well, in the fall of 2016, I actually went to a Foundation Fighting Blindness event. And there I met 2 of the members of the Edmonton Seahawks blind hockey team. They definitely had a lot of enthusiasm and convinced me that when there's some more events that I should come out. So in the spring of 2017, I came out to my first blind hockey event. And later that year, I played in my first tournament in November 2017. And, it's all went on from there. My experience has just been great. I spent, 8 years where I had my hockey gear on the shelf. And even though I would be out skating once in a while, I never strapped on my hockey gear. I never thought that I would be able to play hockey again. And then I discovered blind hockey and realized that, really hockey was just beginning. And it's just been amazing to play in the tournaments and, to be on the ice again. And to get a team started locally was just another dream come true.
That's really cool, and in your answer, it's pretty clear that you've got such passion for the sport of hockey and having the ability, just the opportunity to participate in blind hockey, attend events. Obviously, it's been powerful, and I would think a huge thing for you. So that's pretty cool because that's been a consistent theme over all of our episodes as well. So that's pretty cool.
For sure. Yeah, I think it's a very special thing in people's lives, and based on my own experience and how much joy and happiness it brought. That was the main fuel in pursuing a team based out of Red Deer, Alberta, and trying to find those people and get them playing hockey, and just so they could receive the same benefits that I have.
Oh, that's pretty amazing, and we'll certainly spend much more time talking about the program that you started there with the Central Alberta Bullseye Blind Hockey club. But, over the last 3 seasons, you've done more than just play locally. You've been one of the more active and dedicated players in terms of attending Canadian blind hockey events, including Eastern Regionals, Western Regionals, Nationals, and summer camps. So, Dustin, what's your favorite part about attending Canadian blind hockey events?
Well, it's got to be the people, meeting other hockey players of various backgrounds, various levels of vision, and just interacting with them and understanding a little more about their life and their struggles and their happiness. So it's largely about the people, and it's also just a lot of fun to get out there and compete against them. And all these events over the last 3 years with Canadian blind hockey, they've just been really well run, and they're just great, a great organization to be involved in.
We want to congratulate you once again for starting the Central Alberta Bullseye Blind Hockey Program, which, again, you mentioned based out of Red Deer. And it makes it, interestingly enough, I think your province now leads the way for senior clubs in terms of 3 teams in Alberta, of course, conveniently located halfway between the Calgary Seeing Ice Dogs and Edmonton Seahawks. So it really fills that void, where, as you mentioned, it's, a big gap there, and it's not easy for players in Red Deer to necessarily get to Alberta, Edmonton or Calgary. So it's great that you were able to provide this. But what, I think you kind of alluded to it already, but what made you want to start the program? And what lessons have you learned from that, and, can maybe share with people who have the same aspirations to start a team?
Right. Well, when I went to the 2019 Canadian National Tournament, which of course is in March, I had the idea in mind, and I was seeking out a few different people and asking questions about running their clubs. When I came back in April and May of last year, I started a Facebook page, and I started to work with the provincial blind sport organization, working towards trying to find some players and get a program started up. And certainly the inspiration was, I guess one was for myself to just be able to play hockey more often, because it's just a little too far. We have a little too busy a family life to be getting to Edmonton or Calgary regularly.
Sure.
So I just wanted to play more. And I also believe that even though the city of Red Deer is only about 100,000 people, I believe that Red Deer and the surrounding area would have other people like me, of all ages and all backgrounds, that could benefit from getting out on the ice. So I pursued it through the year, and with quite a bit of work, but with a lot of good luck also, we were able to get a program started, and we had 10 ice times through last hockey season, and a couple of those ice times we had members of the Edmonton and Calgary teams join us, and it was a great overall experience to find those few people and really bring blind hockey to Central Alberta.
Again, we're joined by Dustin Butterfield, our co-host for today's show and the founder of the Central Alberta Bullseye Blind Hockey Team. Again, my favorite jersey in the country. Dustin, I've always wanted to know, who designed that jersey? Was it you?
It was. I mean, as I was talking to suppliers, they can give you certain ideas of, the layout of a jersey and stuff, but it was basically me that designed it, and my family helped me come up with the name and the look of it. So we got very lucky too, finding UFA Farm and Ranch Supply Store, who sponsored a dozen jerseys, and I think it turned out pretty well. Hey, Nico?
Oh, absolutely. Dude, I got to figure out how I get one. How do I get one, Dustin?
Well, that's easy, Nico. You got to just make it out here to Alberta and play with us, and maybe you get your hands on.
All right, I may have to arrange a flight out there and hit the ice with you guys once that's safe again. Because honestly, one day my goal is to wear that jersey.
And you're a goalie, right, Nico?
I am. I'll put the blindfold on. I'll do it if I get to wear that jersey.
I really I'd love to have you in a net out here. You've been on the ice before to stop these pucks that are like a hollow cannonball.
Yeah, I have, and so it's kind of funny. I believe it's been about 4 times now where I've done it, and the first 3 times I was still like in my late 20s, really early 30s, and I was like, I don't
Yeah.
know, it just kind of didn't dawn on me how dangerous it actually was to put myself in that position. So I was, obviously a lot of goals were scored on me, but I felt relatively okay. The most recent time I did it, which was maybe only about 2 years ago, I was so anxious and so nervous. Dude, I don't like for to wear that jersey, I would do it again, but I have such more admiration for our goaltenders who put themselves in such a precarious position every game because it
Yeah,
freaked me out the last time.
I've seen the bruise that Lauren Weber had on his arm after taking a puck kind of from the side between his pads. And I don't want to dissuade anybody from playing goal, but I do have to say that I do feel that the blind hockey goalies are the real heroes of our sport. Not only are they stepping in there and playing, with a blindfold and stopping this heavy puck, but also they're traveling across the country with little or no sight, and just there's a lot of courage there overall to pursue a blind hockey goalie career. So I appreciate those guys.
I 100% agree with everything you said there, and you summed it up perfectly. Getting back specifically on the topic of the Bullseye, you and the club were recently featured on AMI, Our Community, an episode of that show, which was a really amazing piece showcasing the positive nature of blind hockey programming, both on and off the ice. How important is it for media to help promote your program and the overall sport of blind hockey? And what was it like for you having, that TV show filmed and then watching it, sharing it with your friends and family?
Well, it was a pretty special experience. It's hard to say enough about it. It was quite an unusual opportunity to run into. A freelance filmmaker from Edmonton had caught our story and discussed it with AMI, and I guess probably in January this year, after giving AMI a few more details, they had funded the project. So it was pretty great to have film crews out, to my backyard rink and probably to, I think, 2 or 3 of our ice times. And, it was very unique experience for sure. And it was very special to sit down with family and watch that. And I think any media coverage that blind hockey can get is a really good thing. I think that the main challenge is, just letting people know that the sport is out there, to gather awareness, and most importantly, to gather more visually impaired players and get them out on the ice to try blind hockey and see if it's a sport for them or if there's another pair sport that may fit what they would like to do. So yeah, I think it's great. I know there's lots of blind hockey clubs that have been featured on NHL broadcasts and stuff. And in Alberta here, we hope to do the same thing next February at an Edmonton Oilers game. We are hoping to be able to demonstrate blind hockey live up there in Rogers Place.
Well, that's very exciting stuff, and we certainly look forward to that. Hope that it all works out, and that there's that opportunity, because obviously the Calgary Flames and Edmonton Oilers, they've done a pretty good job so far of partnering with, as you mentioned, the Seeing Ice Dogs and the Ice Hawks in Edmonton. And, it's great that those NHL teams are willing to build those partnerships for sure.
For sure. And I think we see that a lot in the States too. A lot of the programs coming out of the United States seem to have had a lot of success with their NHL teams too. So yeah, it's just great. It gives it so much more of a voice that people are listening to, and just a wider audience that hears that there is a sport called blind hockey, and
Absolutely.
It's totally accessible, totally welcoming and accepting of everybody, regardless of their age or any skill level or any other detail of their lives, right? We want them out there. We want them trying blind hockey.
Very well said. And for any viewers who haven't had the opportunity to check out the amazing AMI Our Community piece about Dustin and the Bullseye, we highly recommend it. You can find the episode if you go to ami.ca and search for Our Community Blind Hockey. Well, later on, Canadian Blind Hockey will also be sharing that episode link across our social media platforms. And again, we want to thank Dustin for being with us today as he's co-hosting today's episode. And we're going to take a deeper dive into the Canadian blind hockey community throughout today's show with a little bit of a twist, as today's episode features hockey personalities whose backgrounds are rooted in traditional hockey, but who have helped out with a number of blind hockey programs. So coming up, we've got interviews with the ECHL Brampton Beasts, David Pacan. We're also going to catch up with one of our favorites, the voice of the Toronto Maple Leafs and AMI personality, Mike Ross. And then later on in the show, we'll catch up once again with head coach of the Western Mustangs women's hockey team, Candice Moxley. So let's get the show on the road as we catch up with David Pacan up next. Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. I'm now very excited to be joined by David Pacan from the Brampton Beast of the ECHL. David, welcome to the show and thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Our pleasure. I want to start off with a little bit about your hockey background, because in 2009, in the 6th round of the NHL entry draft, you were selected by the Chicago Blackhawks. I got to think that must have been a childhood dream come true. Can you give us a little bit more insight about your hockey career and the path you took?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, just like you said, getting drafted by Chicago is probably one of the best days of my life. And I believe it was right after they won their first cup of their long little dynasty there. So obviously going into camp, all the emotions were high, and you could kind of see the guys around. I think we saw the Stanley Cup as well. So as a 17 or 18-year-old, it was one of the best moments of my life. And ever since then, or even before, I always loved the game. So anything to do with hockey was just a passion of mine my whole life. And it's led me to be where I am today and the person I am today as well.
So you're a professional hockey player with 8 years of pro experience, including playing in ECHL, AHL, and even in the top Slovakian league. But like most of the world, including the blind hockey community, your season with the Brampton Beast was cut short during the COVID-19 pandemic. So can you touch a little bit on how you've dealt with the shock, all the emotions involved there, and what strategies, you're currently using to stay motivated and continue to train while, everything's in limbo?
Yeah, I mean, when we got that call that last week, I believe we were at practice, and you can kind of tell that last day of practice, everyone was kind of uneasy. It was almost like a dreary kind of practice. Like no guys were really making jokes out there and stuff because we heard about everything that was going on. So we had our final practice, and then the next day they were like, "Hey, you guys have to come to the rink and basically pick up your equipment." And we were like in shock. We were like, "Is this happening this quickly?" Like, we didn't even have a couple of days to kind of figure it out. So, yeah, that was really hard. And then the first month after, a lot of guys have families. They got, whether it's children, wives, or whatnot, but hockey is their main source of income. So, to be put in that situation was tough for everyone. We tried to stay together as much as we could, message the guys, see how everyone's doing. I believe there was also a relief fund that was made out for us by the ECHL and the Spit and Chicklets crew. So that was amazing that they did that for us because, frankly, the ECHL, you're not making the top amounts of money that you are in like the NHL or AHL. So, it was a huge blow for us, but we understood the circumstances. It wasn't anything that we can control. But like I said, communication between everyone, that's kind of what got everyone through this. And, things are starting to get back up, so, yeah, like I said, it's been a crazy time, but, you're going to get closer to the guys and everyone around. So it kind of helped out in a different way as well.
A lot of our community, our players have had to adapt their off-ice training. They can't get ice wherever they are, right? So they've developed, a ball that has a bell in it, or, different little tricks to be able to still work on their stick handling or shooting or what the case is. I'm curious, what have you been doing to kind of stay in shape and kind of keep on top of your game as best as you can?
So I live in a condo, right? So the weights, there's not too many weights around here. I think I used the Weiss 5-pounders a couple of times. I've been doing a lot of kind of HIIT workouts. So, unfortunately I have lost a little bit of muscle, but, I've been trying to do walks and go on runs and stuff like that. So it was a little tough, but I also saw that everyone was buying rollerblades too. So I eventually got some rollerblades, and the first day I think I got lost. So I was out there for 2.5 hours. I couldn't find my way home, and I was so exhausted. I was like, I think I pulled my groin a little bit too. So I've been trying to do that here and there, but just anything. Mostly I've been taking walks with the wife and stuff like that. So try and run here and there, but weightlifting is a big thing of me. I always like to do that, so I can't wait for that to start up again. Just doing anything active, that's the best you can do right now.
Absolutely. David, throughout your career, you've faced different challenges and you've had to persevere through some tough times, which really kind of showed your dedication to the sport of hockey. Whether it's been, an instance being called up for a stretch, sent down at times, those moments throughout your career where there's adversity. I'm just curious, when those hard times hit, how did you find yourself pushing through to beat the odds, and what strategies did you employ when you faced those roadblocks?
Yeah, I mean, whenever you get drafted or you're within a system, your expectations are to move up and move up and move up. And unfortunately, sometimes it doesn't happen as quickly as you'd like it to happen. You get called up, maybe you're first liner in the ECHL, but you get called up and you're fourth line with minimal minutes in the AHL, right? So it's a little bit different. But I always tried to learn every time I was up there. I never tried to think of it as being like I should be in the first line in the AHL. You have to earn that spot. So mentally, I always just said, try and learn something every day. Realize why these guys are in the AHL and why they were successful there. So that was one of the strategies I had, was just try and pick up on little things, especially guys with long careers in the AHL. Try and pick up on little things every day and be like, why are they this successful? So, you get sent down, and it's tough too, but you always have to push because you always want to get called back up. So you want to play better when you're in the ECHL because you just want to get that call back up. So there were just a lot of little things like that, and it's as you get older, you kind of pick up on those things a little bit easier. But it was tough when you were young because the first couple of times you were angry at yourself, being like, "I'm supposed to be up. I'm supposed to be up. Why am I not playing there? They signed me." And but as you get older, you kind of realize why they were doing certain things, and kind of, like I said, it shaped me to the player I am today.
You know, you were introduced to the sport of blind hockey when you attended the 2019 National Team Selection Camp in Toronto as a guest coach last summer. It was an awesome camp. What was your first thought when, you kind of heard about blind hockey, and then what did you think after you got to step on the ice and participate with the national group?
It was one of the best things I've ever experienced in my entire life. So usually when we do appearances, they're usually for kids at schools and stuff like that. And this was in the summertime where they asked me to come to the blind hockey training camp. And to be honest with you, I've never heard of it. And it was something that I was really interested in seeing and being a part of. So as soon as I got there, it was funny because like all the guys, it was like I was on the team already for 2 years. Like it was so welcoming. Everyone was already making jokes and stuff like that. So it was amazing. And then as soon as I got on the ice, I was like, okay, what's the difference between regular hockey and this? Because these guys were flying around and everything if you walk by a blind hockey match, then you wouldn't even tell the difference. It's until you really just focus in on it. So these guys were flying around. I'm pretty sure a few guys were faster than me. I'm pretty sure Mark DeMontis, he's way faster than me. So I was looking at this guy as like, geez. But like I said, they kind of explained to me the different rules and everything like that. So everyone was really welcoming. You know what I mean? Because I had a few questions, especially with the helmets and the whistles inside the blue lines and stuff like that. So sure. All the guys were super good on that and trying to explain to me everything. So Joey Cabral, he was always making jokes at me too. I remember a few ones. I don't know if I could say it on air, but he was making a few funny ones, and it's just like you could tell that these guys are just happy to be on the ice. And it was like I said, it's been one of the best things that I've ever been a part of, and I'm happy that moving forward I'm going to be a part of this thing as well.
That's a fantastic testimonial and obviously a great experience. And, one of the things you mentioned there in your answer that I think, maybe people don't realize, but there's so many adaptive versions of hockey. Of course, there's sledge hockey, deaf hockey, there's, warrior hockey in the U.S. There's all sorts of different forms of accessible hockey. But blind hockey, as you mentioned, if you walked into a rink and if there was a barrier where you couldn't hear the sound of the puck immediately, you wouldn't know at first glance that it's a parasport. You would think it's just a really good hockey game. So, obviously one of the goals of the sport is to get to the Paralympics. And I do think that, that in itself is such a big advantage. And one day we will get there for sure.
Yeah.
We're very excited to be joined by David Pacan of the Brampton Beast of the ECHL. And David, following that national team camp, as he flashes that sweet golf shirt with the blind hockey logo, we had 8 national team players attend a Brampton Beast game for our blind hockey night last season. The Beast did a phenomenal job promoting our parasport, which included a demo game with the Toronto Ice Owls, an intermission scrimmage with the GTA Youth Program, and then some national team players dropping the puck at the ceremonial face-off. David, before the game, you got to introduce your new friends and the sport of blind hockey to your Beast teammates. What was it like for you to be the ambassador there, hosting that night and helping to spread awareness of blind hockey?
It was amazing because, like I said before, just like me, they didn't hear much about blind hockey. So I was always trying to advocate about the Canadian national team and blind hockey. And when the guys came into the room, I believe Kelly Serbu, he kind of gave a little speech about what blind hockey is and what we're doing for the training camp and the games that we have in Ottawa upcoming. So that was a huge eye-opener for the guys, and they all loved it. Like, even all the guys inside the room were cracking jokes and stuff like that. So they all went around the room and shook hands with us before the game. And when they did the ceremonial puck drop, they had a little video before that to promote the blind hockey as well. And, a couple guys on the team, and they were like, wow, like, they were really, like, inspired, and they were really like, hey, you've done a great job so far advocating the sport as well. So, that kind of touched me in a positive way. And, unfortunately, I believe at the game, we lost the game, but we were at the end that the guys were at, and I scored a goal. And as soon as I scored a goal, I could see them all jumping up in the air, and I believe I pointed at them, and they were going crazy. So that was obviously a special moment in my heart for sure.
Yeah, that's funny. I was literally just about to ask you because I had heard you scored a goal and, you know, pointed or banged on the glass and they all went nuts. So that's pretty cool that, you know, you remember that moment because all our guys do obviously as well.
Yeah, that was amazing.
Yeah, that's awesome. You know, the sport of blind hockey is growing at all levels, including the goal to, as I mentioned, one day get into the Paralympics. David, what are your thoughts on the high performance stream of blind hockey versus traditional hockey? And do you think that the Paralympic goal is achievable?
Yeah, 100%. You know, just obviously when you guys had that series against the U.S. In Ottawa there, you could tell how passionate everyone was about the sport. I'm a little biased, obviously, being from Canada, and I saw that Canada had a pretty good showing there. But, you know, like I said, everyone was excited that it was going on, and I believe that eventually one day that it will be a Paralympic sport because, like you said, and everyone else says, hockey is for everyone, right? And every time I watch the game, I love it. I think it's high pace, like everyone going. It's basically a regular hockey game. So you know what, everyone deserves to play. And like I said, it's been one of the biggest things that I've been a part of in my whole life. So whatever anyone needs, you know, if they just want to speak to me about certain things or whatnot, but I always want to be there for the guys, and I believe you know, obviously we're going to have to spread it a little bit outside of North America. I think that's a little bit of the tough thing right now. But, you know, there are people out there who still want to play in different countries and stuff like that. So as long as we keep getting the word out, then, you know, eventually it will be in the Paralympic sports one day for sure.
David, we really appreciate you joining us. Before we let you go, we want to do a little bit of a rapid fire segment with you if you're up for that.
Sure.
Awesome. So I want to start off with who would your ideal line mates from the Canadian National Blind Hockey Team be? If you could play with anyone on our team on your line, who would you pick?
I'd have to pick Mark and Kelly because Mark, like I said, he's probably the fastest guy I saw on the ice. So obviously he's going to go in the corners there and get the puck and feed me out in the slot. He's a little workhorse, so I know that he's going to get the puck all the time. And then Kelly, I heard back in the day, actually, he was a fighter. So if everyone wants to start pushing me around or something like that, then I get Kelly up in there and, you know, give him a couple knuckle sandwiches or whatnot. So, so I think those two guys would be my line mates for sure.
Absolutely. Love it. Okay. Let's say you're taking a penalty shot against Joey Cabral. What move are you going with?
I'd have to go 5-hole. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is about him, but I think I'd have to go 5-hole. I don't know why. I could just see it in my head right now, but I'd probably chirp him before he came down anyway. So, you know, get him off his game a little bit.
All right. Let's say you're out there killing a 5-on-3 and there's someone teeing up a clapper at the blue line. Who is the one player you do not want to block their shot?
I'd have to say Anthony Chula. That guy, I've seen him shoot the puck. I've seen him shoot the puck quite a bit. And you know what? I think I actually got hit and I didn't have any pads on or whatnot. So, you know what? I think I'd be getting out of the way, but I don't think Paul would be too happy about that. He'd be sitting me down on the bench for sure.
Who's a tougher coach, Coach Paul or your current coach with the Beast?
Coach Paul for sure. He wasn't giving me any slack when I was out there. That's for sure.
All right, and to end the rapid fire segment, if you were riding on the bus with someone on our team, who would you want to be paired with and who would you not want to be paired with on the bus?
I'd have to say I want to be paired with Joey. Like I said, he was the first one to come up to me and make so many jokes. So I know I'd be laughing the whole way. And then probably Luca. I wouldn't want to sit beside him.
No one wants to sit beside the GM. That's a good answer.
Hopefully he's not listening to that one.
No, that makes sense. You never want to be sitting beside the GM on the bus. I get that. Well, David, before we let you go, we'll wrap things up by asking you, what is one of your favorite things about blind hockey?
You know what? Like I said, when I first got there, everyone was just so welcoming to me. You could tell that these guys are just passionate to play hockey, and they were just the nicest, most genuine people I've ever been a part of. Hockey is for everyone, just like you guys said, and you could tell that these guys, all they wanted to do is just go down on that breakaway and score a goal, just like everyone else, right? So, just the camaraderie that these guys have. Their brothers going to war every single day. They help each other out, and it's an amazing team aspect that they have. And I'm so happy I'm a part of it, and I'm thankful that I got introduced to this, and I'm excited for the future. That's for sure.
Well, David Pacan of the Brampton Beast, we can't thank you enough for everything you're doing within the program and being an ambassador to help grow the sport. We want to thank you for your time and, of course, thank you for being a part of our community. David, stay safe, and we hope we can all get back on the ice soon.
Yes, for sure. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Now it's time for one of my favorite segments of the show, the Canadian Blind Hockey Podcast Player Profile. During this Player Profile segment, we'll be sharing your blind hockey testimonials. Each week, we'll feature a different player from the community. And this episode's Player Profile features Nathan Tunis from Les Hibous de Montréal. Ever since I saw my first NHL game, I have been a passionate hockey fan. Being born with aniridia means I have no iris in my eyes, and because of this, I never dreamed that it would be possible for me to actually be on a hockey team. Les Hibous de Montréal changed all of that for me. When I was 12 years old, my mom and I moved to Montreal, and she contacted Gilles Ouellette, the president of the team. Because I was a bit too young and not quite skilled enough to join right away, he encouraged me to take skating lessons and participate in the Canadian Blind Hockey development camps. I took his advice and developed my skills, and now I am proud to be the youngest member of the Hibous team. Gilles continues to be my mentor, and all of my teammates provide me with a real source of inspiration every day. This year, my hockey dreams were realized to an even greater level when I was invited to represent Les Hibous de Montréal as part of the NHL Hockey is for Everyone event. Standing beside Les Canadiens de Montréal and the Toronto Maple Leafs on the Bell Center ice was an unforgettable experience. This achievement could not have been made possible without my family, particularly my mother, who has encouraged me every step of the way, my father, who volunteers with the Ottawa 67's blind hockey program, and my brother, who volunteers with Les Hibous. Canadian blind hockey has allowed people like me, whose visual deficiency has otherwise prevented them from playing organized hockey, to experience the thrill and excitement of being part of a hockey team. Thank you, Canadian Blind Hockey, for making all of this possible. Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. I'm now very excited to be joined by Mike Ross, PA announcer for the Toronto Maple Leafs of the NHL, as well as host of the Gazette and producer of Now with Dave Brown on AMI Audio. Mike, thanks so much for joining me here today.
Nico, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. You might be the perfect guest for this episode, as on today's edition of the Canadian Blind Hockey Podcast, we're featuring people who, have experience in traditional hockey, but have also gotten involved in the blind hockey community. And with your work, with the Leafs in the NHL, and of course, media for Canadians, accessible Canadians all over the country who are blind or partially sighted, you've got this really unique perspective. So, I guess I'm curious, what is most appealing to you about the sport of blind hockey, and what made you want to get involved in the first place?
When I came to AMI, or before I came to AMI, I didn't know that blind hockey was a thing. I'd been exposed to sledge hockey because a childhood friend of mine, had been part of the game when we were kids. I mean, I'm talking back in the early to mid 80s. He was one of the first group of people that was playing sledge hockey. So I was aware of sledge hockey, but blind hockey was something brand new to me. And so when we broadcasted the Canadian National Blind Hockey Championship, that was my first opportunity. And in fact, I think the first year that I went down, we weren't even broadcasting it on AMI audio. I just knew that it was happening. So I made my way down and took in an afternoon of it. And I just love the enthusiasm of it. I love the fact that it brings in a segment of the population that isn't being kept away from the game. And that's what I love about para sports, period, is the ability of almost anybody to get out there and at least give it a try and see if they want to stick with it. And nobody's barred from it for any reason. I mean, the accessibility, the availability of it is phenomenal.
Mike, for folks who maybe don't realize, you have a very long, distinguished career in both broadcasting and hockey. I think we both share a love and passion for the game, and of course, broadcasting as well. And, I'm curious, what got you interested in announcing hockey to begin with, and what do you love about the job of being PA announcer of the Maple Leafs?
I started announcing when I was in university, and I started with football. I went to Carleton University, and I was volunteering within the athletics department and just helping at various athletic events. So I've been the guy with the mop, at basketball games, mopping up the floor. I helped put up, nets at volleyball games and such. And at the same time, I was hosting a radio show on the campus radio station. It was a sports show. So at one point, the head of game ops for our athletic department came to me and said, "Hey, we need an announcer for football. We don't have an announcer. Our guy left. Would you be interested?" And I said, "Sure, I'll give it a go." Not that I'd ever given it any thought. But I did have some announcers that I was a fan of, guys that I'd heard while I was growing up, guys like Paul Morris with the Maple Leafs, guys like Claude Mouton with the Montreal Canadiens, and more importantly for me, the Montreal Expos. I was a huge Expos fan. So I'd heard these great announcers over the years, and it kind of got me interested. Okay, I'll give this a try. I went out and did football. It went very well. I did it for a few seasons. And in 1998, when I'd moved on and now was working in sports radio, the junior hockey team in Ottawa was looking for a new PA announcer. I had been doing AAA baseball for a couple of years, and it was interesting because the AAA baseball team and the junior hockey team, it was the same announcer. And so as he was sort of exiting baseball, he also exited hockey. So I auditioned for it with the 67s. I did not get the job. James Sobalski, if you remember him from TSN and the Score.
The NHL 20 game, yep.
That's right. So James actually got the gig. And then within a couple of weeks of that, he was moving. And I can't remember if at the time if he was heading to Vancouver or if he was moving to Toronto, but they were back looking for an announcer. And so they came back to me and said, hey, would you be interested in taking the gig? And so in the sort of early winter of 98, I took over there. And I loved it. I mean, we won a Memorial Cup in my first season, which was tremendous. And then within 3 years, I had moved to Toronto. And then I went 10 years without doing any announcing.
Wow.
And then, as luck would have it, the NHL players were at the Olympics that were being held in Vancouver. And at that point, the announcer for the Senators was doing those games in Vancouver, but he would also have to stay there for the Paralympics.
Okay.
So the Senators needed a backup announcer, and the game ops manager there was the guy who had originally hired me with the 67s. And so I got a crack there, and I became sort of the backup in Ottawa, did that for a few years. And then things just started sort of coming together. An audition for the World Juniors, did that. That snowballed into an opportunity with the Canadian men's national soccer team, Pan Am Games, Invictus Games, et cetera, et cetera. So fast forward to 2016, the Leafs gig opens up. And because I'd done stuff with MLSE for the World Juniors, they knew of me. And so they put me on their list of people that they wanted to invite to audition for the Leafs gig. What I love about it, first and foremost, I get to go and watch hockey, right? I mean, that's you go to a hockey game every few nights. That's not a bad way to spend your downtime. I mean, you're going to be watching it on TV anyway. But to be announcing for what is, in my opinion, on the biggest stage in sports in this country, and certainly among the biggest stages in sports in North America, if not the world. I mean, that's tremendous. And if you'd come to me back in 1998 when I first did a hockey game and said, you know what, in less than 20 years, you'll be doing this for the Toronto Maple Leafs, I would have laughed at you. Like, there's not a chance. That never crossed my mind.
Yeah.
But it's the biggest stage. It's got fans around the world, and it's a tremendous honor.
It's personally, again, hearing you talk about that journey, it's inspiring for sure. It's pretty incredible because, I think my path shares similarities to yours in that, I didn't call my first game of any sport until I was in college. And, I knew I wanted to be involved in broadcast in some regard, but I'd only ever held a camera prior to that. I had never been on the mic. Having the opportunity to be the voice of Leafs Gaming League and being the face of esports for the Maple Leafs is a huge honor. And as you mentioned, once you start to get your foot in the door with MLSE or certain groups, they get to know you a little bit, they become more comfortable. It's funny how all those hard nights and weekends that you give up staying and working at the rink and in all different capacities, people don't really see that, and they one day you appear at that level and people think of you as, an overnight success, but, you detail it there. There's such a journey that goes into it. So that's pretty cool that you're able to share that with us, and we appreciate that.
No, it's to me, Nico, and you've actually lived this. People ask me all the time, what sort of advice would you give to anybody who wants to get into the business of announcing or the business of radio or whatever? And I always say the number one thing is, get out there and get as much experience as you can, get as many opportunities as you can. And, sometimes that means you're going to be working for free. Sometimes it means you're going to be working for free for long hours. But I think about the early days when I did broadcasting for Rogers Community TV. I think about, the fact that the World Juniors in 2015, 2014, 2015. The reason I got that was because I made a call to Hockey Canada, knowing full well that when Canada hosts the World Juniors, there was always a French announcer and an English announcer. Well, I'm fluently bilingual. So I figured they're going to hire somebody to do it anyway. Why not hire me to do them both? So I called Hockey Canada and asked if they were going to be holding auditions. And it's not like it's something that they make public. They don't put out an advisory saying, come on down and audition.
Yeah.
You have to be connected to them. They have to know who you are. And because I made that phone call, well, now they knew who I was. I got the audition, I got the gig, and that was my foot in the door with MLSE. So fast forward to 2016 when I'm getting my audition with the Maple Leafs. I end up auditioning in the same room where I auditioned for the World Juniors.
Oh, no
I end up
way.
auditioning with the same game ops manager by my side that was there when I auditioned for the World Junior gig. So I walk into that scenario nervous, no doubt about it, because it is the Maple Leafs and it's a huge gig,
For sure.
but with a certain level of comfort, having been through the experience in that environment before. But none of that happens if I don't make that call to Hockey Canada back in 2014. So that's why I always say, I don't care who you are. I don't care what you're going after, what you're interested in. Sometimes you're going to have to make your own breaks. You're going to have to get yourself out there and create some of those opportunities. But those opportunities are there. And sometimes you're going to blow somebody away simply by showing that initiative and that interest. And suddenly doors are going to be opening for you that you never thought would have opened.
Good advice there, as we're very excited to be joined by PA announcer for the Toronto Maple Leafs, amongst other hats that he wears, Mike Ross. And Mike, speaking of the Leafs, obviously their season currently suspended due to COVID-19. But during the outbreak, you've come up with a pretty innovative and fun way of, recording some personalized goal calls for fans who've been, thirsting for the action. So can you tell us how you came up with this idea? And do you know roughly how many of these goal calls you've done?
Well, how I came up with it's sort of twofold. I'd seen that Al Murdoch, who's the voice of the Vancouver Canucks, had been doing some goal calls for Canucks fans, but they were sort of general calls, just Vancouver Canucks players, and here's a goal by Brock Besser, and here's the assist. It wasn't like he was personalized, and he was just taking current roster players.
Sure.
And then a couple of days later, there was a posting on social media by a family who had a little boy who was having his birthday, and it was the first weekend of lockdown in the province of Ontario. And so this kid couldn't have a birthday party, couldn't have his friends over. They were going to have a Leafs-themed party, and it couldn't happen. So I thought, you know what? Let me take that birthday and that milestone for that kid and turn it into a goal call and send them a quick video. And so I did, and a few people noticed it and asked me if I would do one for them. And so it was a sort of a slow trickle over that weekend. And then I put the call out on the Monday and said, listen, if you've got a goal call that you want, just send it to me. Send me the information, and I'll send it back to you via Instagram or Twitter. And I got absolutely inundated. And so roughly 14 weeks later, I just did a couple more over the weekend. It has slowed down considerably. But over those 14 weeks, I have done in the neighborhood of 1,205 videos.
Oh my gosh.
And, each of those videos would take about 45 seconds to a minute and a half from starting the recording to having it edited and then sent back to that fan via Twitter or Instagram. So you do the math on, I'm not a math guy. You do the math on 1,205 videos times roughly a minute. It took a lot of time. It took a lot of patience on behalf of the fans because, I mean, I'm doing my shows for AMI in the morning, and then I'm doing my other voice work from home during the day, and I'm trying to knock out between 25 and 50 videos a day just to try to keep pace with the whole thing. So it was a tremendous undertaking. But the passion of those fans was awesome. The patience that they showed with me in just keeping me on top of things. Hey, don't forget my video. Are you getting around to mine yet? It was great. And along the way, tremendous generosity from the fans who started asking me, if they could donate to a charity or to a cause. And I'm always happy to advocate for MLSE's Launchpad, which is a great organization, community-based organization to help kids learn about life through sports, among other things. And we were able to raise a whole bunch of money for that. And like I said, we're still getting a few here and there. So if people want to get them into me, I'm still doing them. At Rossi on the mic is the Twitter and Instagram handle. That's ROSSY on the MIC. And as long as you're patient with me and you allow me to get it to you in due time, it'll get done.
Okay, well, now I don't feel so bad about putting you on the spot here. And that's a phenomenal story, incredible dedication. But like I said, now I don't feel so bad because you had to know this was coming. We're going to ask you to do a personalized goal call for blind hockey, maybe something along the lines of, goals scored by number one, blind hockey at home. Assisted by AMI and CNIB Foundation. Something, just something along the lines of that.
Blind hockey at home. Let me write this down. Blind hockey at home, AMI, and CNIB.
You got it.
All right, here we go. Goals scored by number one, Blind Hockey at Home. Assisted by Accessible Media, Inc. and the CNIB. Time of the goal, 9:09. That's Blind Hockey at Home from AMI and CNIB at 9:09.
That's phenomenal, Mike. Thank you so much for doing that. That's amazing. We're sorry to cut the line, everybody. We didn't mean to butt in, but we had to take advantage of that. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. Absolutely.
So, Mike, switching a little bit to blind hockey, you spent a career calling hockey, and then you started working on subject matter for Canadians who are blind or partially sighted through your work with AMI. What were your thoughts the first time you experienced blind hockey?
The first thing I felt when I did was walking into the Mattamy Athletic Center, now, formerly Maple Leaf Gardens. I remember walking by one end of the rink where it's all glass walls, so you can actually look in on the arena. And so as I got closer, I could hear that hockey was being played. But it didn't really it hit me that what was going on was blind hockey. Because the pace of the game was so intense and the players so fast and skilled that you'd really have to stand there and really pay attention to little details like the size of the puck, the size of the net. Otherwise, if you're just looking at it in passing, it's hockey. It's just hockey, and that's all it is. And so that was my first impression was this is not really that different from any hockey I've ever played. Of course, there are rule adaptations, but you're going to have that anytime you look into an accessible sport. There are going to be parts of the game that are likely slightly adapted for wheelchair play, sledge play, blind play. But in the end, it's still hockey. And then when we started getting involved in events like, coming out and trying blind hockey, which in our experience with broadcasting at AMI, we got to sort of join in on you guys hosting some of those events. And when you see how excited a kid is to get out there and understand that they can play too. Hockey is a huge part of this country, and there are just so many people who get the opportunity to go out and play at all kinds of levels and at all kinds of skill level. But for a kid who's blind or partially sighted, I think there comes a time when they just feel like, I'm never going to get to try that. And what I've seen in the few years that I've been around Canadian blind hockey is the game has opened up to a whole generation of players and a whole group of people who for years and years and years never thought that they would get a chance to get involved in the game. And when you see that excitement and you hear it in a kid's voice, and you know what, Nico, I mean, honestly, you hear it in the voice of adults who are getting a chance to play for the first time as well.
Yeah.
It's just awesome because it means that as Canadians who love hockey, they're now getting a chance to participate in the game as well. They're not on the outside looking in like I was the first time I saw blind hockey. They're on the ice. They're playing the game. They're getting to be on a team. I mean, why do we love sports so much? What do you hear athletes talk about when they retire from the game? They miss the camaraderie, right?
Yep.
And you take anybody through those tournaments that we've broadcasted from and all the events that I know you've been at, go to the post-tournament gatherings.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a tremendous sense of community that we have in all parts of hockey across this country. And it's just great that now, more than ever, there's this game that's being shared and introduced to a whole bunch of people who maybe thought that they wouldn't get that opportunity in the past.
Yeah, it's, I think you hit the nail on the head there. Obviously, hockey as a whole has a very unique and tight-knit community, but the blind hockey community especially, it's just a whole different, it's a family, right? Wherever you're from, whatever your story is, you're openly accepted, and there's an opportunity for you to get on the ice, and that's pretty special for sure. And obviously that's, one of the main goals of Canadian blind hockey is to ensure that any Canadian with who's blind or partially sighted has an opportunity to skate or try blind hockey. And, obviously there's aspirations to get up to the Paralympics as well, but it really does start at that grassroots level. Mike, one of the things that would have been a huge step for Canadian blind hockey and on the broadcast side would have been this 2020 Canadian National Blind Hockey Tournament, because AMI was set to make history with live broadcasts of the gold medal game on AMI Audio, AMI TV, and the French language AMI Télé. Now, unfortunately, that will not happen at the moment because obviously everything's been postponed with the COVID-19 stoppage. But one of the interesting notes was that we were going to have you come on, not to be my broadcast partner for that game, but to actually be the French language play-by-play voice for that broadcast. When I heard that, I was super excited. I thought nobody better could they have picked, so that was great. But I'm curious, have you done play-by-play in French before, and how are you planning on preparing for that broadcast?
I've never done play-by-play in French, but I mean, I've watched. I've done a ton of play-by-play in English, and all the announcing that I've done around sports in French and English. But I've also been a fan of the teams like the Montreal Expos. So growing up in Ottawa, you'd watch. I mean, we didn't have at my house. We didn't have TSN, so you didn't get the TSN games of the week, things like that. There was no NHL Network back then, so you watched Maple Leaf games on Saturday night, and during the rest of the week, we would get Montreal Canadiens games and Quebec Nordiques games. So guess what? Guess what we're watching? And being that I was brought up in a bilingual household, it wasn't an issue for me. Like, I knew a lot of people who watched French language hockey broadcasts and didn't understand a word that was being said. They were just watching it for the hockey. I watched it for both because I did understand what was being said. So if anything, I was preparing and just going back and watching some video of just sort of classic games and reaching out to some of the French broadcasters that I know that are in the game now to just sort of brush up on some of the terms that some of the play-by-play terms and things like that. But otherwise, I was ready to go, and I was pretty pumped about it too. When I was first approached and asked if I would be willing to give it a go, I said absolutely. And I was ready to do it for a couple of reasons. Number one, I was confident I could do it. I didn't think that AMI needed to go and start, looking for someone from outside of AMI. And I've had plenty of experience through AMI with described video and live described sports, and I've been through some training for that as well. So I felt I was the right guy for it, and I was putting in the work in order to be as prepared as I could. And so I was tremendously disappointed when we had to pull the plug on the event because of the COVID situation. But it just means I've got more time to prepare for when we do pull it off, because I'm really looking forward to it. And I think AMI is also really excited about getting it done as well.
Yeah, I think it was something that all of us who knew that this was coming were, incredibly excited about, because, it just brings everything to a whole nother level of professionalism and, a platform that really allows Canadians from coast to coast to coast to be able to tune into such a special event. So, yeah, no doubt we're all excited
when you
to get
think
back.
when you think about the popularity of the game too in Quebec, in Montreal, I mean, some of the real pioneers of blind hockey are from the Montreal area. A lot of the research that, when we talk about research that's being done into improving the puck that's used in blind hockey, you're talking about French Canadians that are taking part in that. So I thought it was a really important step, to really bring the game to a part of the Canadian population that didn't have it in their language. And I really appreciate Emmy today for putting forth the interest in making that happen. And I applaud it, and I look forward to participating in it in the future.
Absolutely. We're very pleased to be joined by Mike Ross, PA announcer for the Toronto Maple Leafs and host and producer with AMI. Mike, a couple quick things before we let you go. We want to do a quick little rapid fire with you, if you may, as we're going to open this up to either national team players or open division players. Heck, you can even use some of the children and youth players if you want to pick them for your answers here. So let's start off with, who is the fastest skater in blind hockey?
The fastest skater. I'm blanking on the first name, but Richard.
Simone, yes.
Simon Richard.
Yeah.
I have some pretty cool, videos in my mind. They talk about having a photographic mind. Well, I got videos in my head of watching Simon just zip around that Mattamy ice. And just the coast to coast scoring plays. So I'm going to go with Simon Richard.
That's a good answer. I like that. All right, who has the nicest wrist shot in the sport?
The nicest wrist shot. So, are we talking strictly the look of it? Are we talking about the success that player has in scoring on the
No, because I was going to ask you who's most likely to score a goal if you need one in the clutch. So let's just go with stylistically who's got the
Okay.
nicest looking shot.
Okay. Kelly Serbu is always a guy that he's always getting mentioned in games. Sometimes it's for really good offensive reasons. Other times it's because, well, he's a little offensive when he plays and gets the elbows up a little bit here and there. I'm going to go with Kelly. Kelly to me is one of my favorite players to watch year in and year out. So I'm going to go with Kelly on that one.
Yeah, that's a good choice as well. All right, a couple more rapid fire. Who would you pick to block a shot in the clutch if you needed someone to lay their body down?
I'm going to go with Mark DeMontis on this one.
Okay.
You know what? I mean, Mark's a guy who plays good offense, but is always the first guy who will answer the call defensively if it's needed, and he'll play back there. And I've seen him, take a few dives in front of some pucks to help his team out. So I'm going to go with Mark on that one.
All right. And lastly, who are you picking to score a goal in overtime in the clutch if the game's on the line?
I'm going to pick a player here that may not be top of mind for everybody, but I'm picking him only because I've seen him play at the national championship of two different sports now, and that's Kiefer Jones. Kiefer is a talented guy, and I've seen him score some pretty important goals at very crucial times. I've seen him excel in a team sport environment, but then I've also watched him excel in an individual sport like golf at the Canadian Blind Golf Championship. So I'm going with Kiefer on this one. He's a guy who, I'm just tremendously jealous of his athletic ability, whether it be on the ice or on the golf course. He's a heck of an athlete, and I'm going to go with Kiefer on that one. I think that he's the guy that if it were all there, he can handle that pressure.
That's a great answer. I think, like you said, a little bit off the radar, but a really smart answer, and I like that one for sure. Mike, thank you so much for joining us. One final thought before we say goodbye. Obviously one of the ultimate goals with the sport is to gain inclusion into the Paralympics. What do you think it's going to take for the sport to grow and one day achieve that ultimate goal of being in the Paralympic Winter Games?
I think it's all about continuing the efforts that have already been started by the Canadian Blind Hockey Association and in growing the game and getting those local associations and really showing Hockey Canada and thus the international bodies that there's an interest there. But in doing so, also continuing the efforts that Blind Hockey Canada has done in spreading the game around the world and being ambassadors for the game in places like Europe, places like Asia, and certainly the United States has done a nice job at growing the game south of the border. So it really is about sort of a two-pronged approach. You want to keep growing it here in Canada, keep the kids getting involved and growing it at that level, but then also maintaining the efforts at spreading it worldwide, because ultimately that's what the Paralympics are about. It's about world competition. It's not just right here at home. So we've got to show how successful we can be at organizing the game here and getting leagues set up here, and then taking that expertise and that knowledge elsewhere and helping it set up around the globe.
Mike Ross, PA announcer of the Toronto Maple Leafs, host and producer with AMI, and I'm lucky to call him a friend as well. Mike, thank you so much for joining us today and for all you do in helping to grow the sport of blind hockey.
It is my pleasure to have been here, Nico, and I look forward to seeing you again soon in the flesh, in person, and most notably at a blind hockey event. I'm really looking forward to that.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. We're now very excited to be joined by the head coach of the University of Western Mustangs women's hockey team, Candice Moxley. Candice, thanks so much for joining us here today.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
You know, you've had such a great career in hockey, having played in the NCAA and then the Canadian Women's Hockey League. After retiring on the ice, you became a coach and coached in the NCAA and the CWHL, and now you're in U Sports at the University of Western Ontario. But from being the Clarkson Cup champion to being named the head coach of the Western Mustangs, what are some of your career achievements that stick out in your mind?
Oh, wow. There's so many. It's not necessarily like having a cup at the end or a medal at the end. I think a lot of my achievements have been just providing opportunities and experiences for my student athletes to kind of broaden their horizons and have an opportunity maybe to play at the college level. When I went to Buffalo State and I coached at Buffalo State, that was more of like a rebuilding a program type of thing. And it was a big challenge for me as a coach. But seeing the success that those players saw throughout their careers and being a part of that program, I think it's a great opportunity for them to see they put in hard work and what they get out of it. And I would say that would be my highlight for sure.
That's pretty neat. And, I think you've got this interesting perspective where you transition from a professional player to being an assistant coach and then from an assistant coach to a head coach. And obviously there's a lot of dedication and passion and love for the game there. But can you maybe touch on that journey a little bit and how, you've enjoyed being behind the bench as opposed to being on the ice?
Yeah, well, it was kind of a weird, I came to a crossroads where it was, do I keep playing or do I kind of try a new path in career? And I had just graduated with my teaching degree. So I finished my student placements and I had a great experience in the classroom, but the classroom, I feel like the ice was more of my type of a classroom where I fit. So I was given an opportunity to go coach at Robert Morris University in the U.S. And that was, Nate Handerhan was the head coach at the time. And I had known him through the Hockey Network. And I remember him calling me up. And it was basically one question he asked me because it was a grad assistant position. And he was like, okay, do you want to coach or are you here for the education? And I responded, I want to coach. And he's like, okay, when can you be here? So it was kind of like I packed up my bags like the next month and headed down. But it was that opportunity that, if you're able to find your passion and be able to create a living behind it, they say, pardon the cliche, you'll never work a day in your life, but it's exactly that. And I haven't looked back. It's been a great experience and I've been able to travel the world. Not many can say that, and I'm pretty fortunate to be in that position.
Yeah, I can really appreciate what, the examples and kind of what you mean, because if you're lucky enough to, work in sports and work at a certain level, you get these opportunities that very few people do. And it's, if you're at all a reflective person, you realize just how special it is, the positions you're in, for sure.
Absolutely.
Candice, you kind of became involved with Canadian blind hockey when your Mustangs volunteered as sighted guides for the Canadian Blind Hockey Try-It program in London, Ontario. That was such a great day. I think we all have very fond and vivid memories of that. But what was your first thought when you heard the term blind hockey?
I read the email a few times because I was like, wait a second. I'm like, this is different. I've never heard of it. I've never experienced it, seen it. I was like, wow, okay. This would be, well, I'll learn something and hopefully our players will learn something as well. And it took a few times to read that email. I was like, this is okay, sure. Why not? It's hockey. how different can it be? Let's do this. So it was an awesome day for sure.
I'm curious if there's, any moment that stuck out to you at that event, because that was a really interesting event where we had, skaters who were literally skating for the first time. They were new Canadians who hadn't skated before in their lives, and Canadian Blind Hockey provided them that chance as a blind or partially sighted youth to get on the ice. But then there were also some more experienced players who were kind of whipping around and sniping top shelf. So, I guess what was your overall feel from that day?
You know what? It was one of the most humbling experiences I've been a part of. I did have blisters after tying skates, but we got everybody out on the ice. We had everybody skating, and I mean, it was an awesome experience. And my players still talk about it and how great it was for them to be a part of it. But I mean, you could see some of my players who were a little bit like they wanted to go and rip those pucks too. I mean, and they wanted to be a part of it and play it as well. So we definitely a mix. But I was so proud of every student that came out on the ice, because I mean, they tried it. Everybody got out there and they didn't sit on the bench, or if they were on the bench, we had them out doing a few laps, and then we'll sit them down for a bit, go back, grab them, make them try it again until they got a little bit more comfortable. And then by the end, a few were just going by themselves, just holding onto the boards and just going around the board, say, leave me alone, I'm good.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of fun.
That's pretty special and pretty cool that some of your players still talk about that day too. I think one of the things that youth sports and the Western Mustangs, the university, does so well is embracing those community clubs and events like that. So can you maybe touch on why it's important for your team and you as a head coach to be associated with events like the Canadian Blind Hockey Try It and Learn to Skate program?
Yeah, I feel like what I touched on a little bit earlier is that it's being able to give back to your communities and broadening your horizons as a person. We're pretty fortunate to be in the position we are and have Western, the facilities and everything we have there, and being able to give back to the sport, I think it's what we should be doing at all levels, all ages, and all kinds of hockey. So not just limiting it to just the local girls programs in the area, but knowing that, okay, there's blind hockey that's out there. Absolutely. Let's try and grow that game where it's some other things that exist beyond our bubble that we live in. So it's great to provide those opportunities for our players to know that, like, absolutely, we can help out in any level in any way we can.
One of the phrases that the NHL, one of their movements that they like to support and trumpet is the, hockey is for everyone hashtag. And I'm just curious, having been involved firsthand, having seen what Canadian Blind Hockey is doing, do you feel like Canadian Blind Hockey is, truly living that statement of hockey is for everyone?
Absolutely. No question. And that's one of the things where, I mean, these players that step out on the ice and play this game and play blind hockey, I mean, how brave must they be? And it's like they're stepping out of their comfort zones and they're getting out there and they're playing and they're unbelievable athletes. So give credit where credit's due, and these players are something special. And I'm feeling like blind hockey's just getting started, and the growth of the game, there's some pretty awesome ambassadors that you're going to have for this sport moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, very well said. And we're very lucky today to be joined by Candice Moxley, head coach of the University of Western Mustangs women's hockey team, former Clarkson Cup champion as well with the Markham Thunder. Today's episode, Candice, is all about people who've got a traditional hockey background who have somehow gotten involved with Canadian blind hockey. And we're, always wanting feedback and ways to improve our programming. And we think one of the most valuable sources, other than obviously the participants on the ice, is people like yourself who have elite level hockey experience, who have gotten involved. And, we're so thankful for, as you mentioned, great ambassadors like yourself being involved. I guess, seeing hockey at the highest level that you've been at, what does the programming within Canada still need to do to kind of elevate even further?
Well, that's a that's a big question. You know what? And I think it's lifting up people and programs and those around you. I think is number one. And it takes a lot of people. So getting the right people on the bus and pushing forward, and there's going to be a lot of obstacles and barriers. That's a given. It's a given in women's hockey just alone. We see those battles every day with the PWHPA. So, I mean, it's going to be a fight. And it always comes, finances are always going to be a piece of that. But like I said, getting the right people on board, I think you can do it a little bit faster. But there will be obstacles.
For sure. And, that's an interesting point. And again, we want to, congratulate our new president, Kelly Serbu, on that position. And that totally ties into having the right people on board and, doing the right things to advance the sport forward. And it's definitely an exciting time going forward in Canadian blind hockey. And I know one of the things that Kelly is pushing to have instituted as soon as it's safe to return to play is women's blind hockey programming, because the sport right now currently is co-ed, but Kelly Serbu, president of Canadian Blind Hockey and Canadian Blind Hockey as a whole, there's a direct focus on developing and growing the women's side of the game. With your experience and credentials in women's hockey, how important is it for the girls and women in the Canadian blind hockey community to have their own program?
Yeah, I think it's very important. I mean, I've played co-ed with the boys a few times, and I mean, there is a difference in our physical presence, where you're not going to win those battles just based on biology alone. So having a girls' game where it's a level playing field a bit, I think could benefit. And I mean, it will be a great opportunity for those female athletes.
If there's, whether it be a little girl or maybe an adult woman who is blind or partially sighted and has, maybe just learned about blind hockey and they're maybe feeling a little bit anxious about getting onto the ice, what advice would you have for that person?
It's normal to feel nervous. That's okay. It's absolutely okay. And it might take a few times getting out there for that nervousness to disappear. But take a few times to try it at least, because I mean, it's just planting the seed, like the passion. Once you get out there and you start getting comfortable and you're around your own people, like everybody that just loves hockey and loves the sport, it makes it so much easier. And that community support, that teammate support, I mean, those are the relationships and the bonds that make it such a great experience.
Candice, before we let you go, one of the goals within the sport globally is to eventually gain inclusion in the Paralympic Winter Games. You've had the opportunity to see some blind hockey at both the grassroots level and the elite national level. So do you think that goal of gaining Paralympic status is achievable for the sport?
Oh, I would think so. Yeah, I would absolutely think so. I mean, and like I said, we're talking about athletes here that are passionate and they love playing this sport and they play hard. And I know after being on the ice with the grassroots and not knowing much about blind hockey, I Googled it and I watched it. And I mean, it's a pretty exciting game and it's a pretty special game. So I would hope that goal is reached sooner rather than later.
Well, I think we all feel the same there. And Candice, we'll let you enjoy the cottage scenery behind you, because if I were sitting where you were, I wouldn't want to be looking at a screen right now. So we can't thank you enough for joining us here today.
Great, thanks. I'm gonna run jump off the dock in 2.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. Stay safe, and we look forward to being back on the ice once it's safe, Candice.
Great, thanks, Nico.
Take care. Folks, stay tuned. We'll be back with more of the show after this short break. Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. Dustin, what an amazing episode we had today. You know, Canadian Blind Hockey is so fortunate to have so many people from around the hockey world who are parts of our ever-growing community. Dustin, before we wrap up this week's episode, I have to put you on the spot a little bit. What are your top 3 blind hockey memories?
Yeah, I mean, it's been just a great journey, but I can definitely pick out 3. I think first I would have to point back to February of 2020 when we had the Blind Hockey Battle of Alberta. You know, it was just a lot of fun, a great day with members of the Edmonton Seahawks, Calgary Steaming Ice Dogs, and the Central Alberta Bullseye Blind Hockey. You know, we had a pretty good game. You know, we had about half the players were actually made up of sighted volunteers, which, you know, specifically in Red Deer, we just had a fantastic turnout of volunteers throughout our season. So that game that we had was just a lot of fun, and it just also kind of finished off our first season of Bullseye Blind Hockey in a really great way. Second, I think I'd have to point back to my last tournament, which was last fall in Ottawa. It just overall, the experience was fantastic. My wife and my 3 children had come out to Ottawa, and so we saw the sights. None of us had ever been there, you know, Parliament Hill. We were actually there for the Remembrance Day ceremony, which was the day after the tournament ended. And, you know, the hockey itself in the open division, it was just a good tournament for me. Traditionally, I'm a defenseman, and but in that tournament, I only played about half a game on defense, and I played the rest of the 3 games on forward. I even took a few face-offs and played center just on a penalty kill. You know, of course, I got 1 penalty, as I always will, at least 1. But I scored a nice goal, and you know, generated some other offensive chances. You know, and again, the people and that was Frank Fornacier coaching our team, and it just was a great overall experience with some highlights in the plays and stuff too. And third, I'd have to talk about both of the summer development camps that I've been to. They've just been great. You know, those 2 camps also had Team Canada at them. So at both camps, I was able to play against the Team Canada guys in several games. In fact, I think I can make a claim to fame here that I'm one of very few people who has actually got a win on their record against Team Canada. So I'll throw that out there against them. You know, never mind that there was, you know, a good 10 or 12 sighted players on the team with me. And you know, the development camps are just, you have a lot of time to interact with people and get to be better friends with people, and, you know, get to know some people a little better that you've only just sort of played with once. And you just spend so much time at a development camp on the ice, doing drills, playing games, playing scrimmages. It's just a fantastic event to be part of.
Yeah, those development camps are certainly special experiences, and I think we're all, anxiously anticipating the next time we're safely able to hold one of those camps. And I bet you that enrollment for whatever particular event we first come back with will probably be an all-time high enrollment, because I think everyone just wants to get back out there once it's safe.
Yeah, I think so, Nico. And I know you've been out there coaching me at maybe both of the development camps. Can you tell me about your experiences being on the ice as a player and a coach at those events?
Yeah, honestly, that's so fun for me. And it's one of those moments where I realize how lucky I am to be a part of the community, because, I don't necessarily have the professional hockey background that a lot of our coaches do. You look at Coach Paul, who, played NCAA hockey and played, junior hockey.
Yeah.
And a lot of our coaches, Coach Streetcar, who played overseas professionally. A lot of our volunteers have these, incredible backgrounds where they can lean on their experiences. And I was always very much kind of a house league. I played for the love of the game. And, I've been fortunate as a broadcaster to work in some professional circles, but my on-ice skills, are nothing compared to some of these other coaches. So for me to be able to be on the ice and just help in whatever capacity I can is such a humbling and fun experience. And I'm not completely ignorant to the game. I understand a little bit. If you ask Sean Heaslip, that's my coaching claim to fame. I helped that man fix his shot, because it was the camp in Burnaby a couple summers ago where we were working with the open division guys, and we're doing that drill where we're shooting just off the boards, and the
Yep.
intent of the drill is shoot it hard and straight ahead. And Sean could shoot it. He could rip it, but he would always shoot it off to the side. And I just gave him one little,
Right.
tip of advice, one little adjustment. And after that, he was like scoring goals, top shelf. He was ripping it. And obviously, he was invited to some of those national team training camps as well. So that's my coaching claim to fame. I helped Sean fix his shot. He is, he did all the work, but that's my one little coaching claim to fame.
Yes.
But no, it's so fun for me
Sean's a
just
good,
to be out there.
he's a good player, Sean. He's kind of a playmaker too, actually, in that camp. He was one of the leaders in some of the games that we had there. No, that's awesome. Now, I think I've got a challenge upcoming here for you, Nico. Do you think you'll be out on the ice at our next development camp?
That is certainly my intent. Yes, as long as I am physically able to, I will be out there. Yes.
So we have this goalie, maybe you've heard of him, Lauren Weber from Edmonton, Alberta. And,
Yep.
he perhaps is on the Canadian national team. Do you think that you can score on Lauren Weber, Nico?
Oh, no. Honestly, Dustin, I don't think I can. I've seen Lauren play over the last few years, and he is so sneaky good with that glove hand. You're breaking in, you think you've got that, space where you can tuck the puck up tight on him, and out of nowhere, he just flashes the leather on you. So I would like to think I can, but realistically, no, I probably can't.
Well, you gotta take a positive attitude, Nico. So yeah, I'm gonna call you out. I don't think you can score on Lauren either. So at the next development camp, when the opportunity presents itself, I want to be there watching and see if Nico can put one past Lauren. Maybe we'd even give you like 3 chances.
Well,
See if you can get
I
2
would
up.
definitely need more than one chance. That's for sure. That challenge I'm open to. If I get 3 chances, I'm not saying I have a better chance, but I'm saying there's a slim chance.
Sounds great, Nico.
Oh, fantastic stuff. Dustin, again, we want to thank you so much for pitching in with co-hosting duties here today. What were your thoughts about this week's show, and what do you think about Canadian blind hockey's vision for the sport going forward?
Oh, I think it was an awesome show. I think it was good in this 4th episode, to showcase some of the people that aren't necessarily deeply entrenched in the Canadian blind hockey family. I think it's important that, there's other people out there that are aware of us and, can help promote us. And I think it's very interesting to see, the observations from the outside. I think that's just a great thing to add their perspective.
Well, no question about it. Dustin, you've done a great job here today. We want to thank you so much for joining us on the show and being a great ambassador for the blind hockey community. If folks want to learn more about the Central Alberta Bullseye Blind Hockey Program, how can they get in touch? Where can they find out more info?
Yeah, I try to keep all the information on our Facebook page. So if they searched Facebook for Central Alberta Bullseye Blind Hockey, they would be able to find our page, and they would be able to message me by that medium. And if that's not accessible to them, if they were to reach out to anybody at Canadian Blind Hockey, Matt Morrow or Luca DeMontis, all those people have my contact information and can easily connect me with them.
Well, again, Dustin, that's a beautiful jersey behind you, a great program you're building there, and we want to thank you for everything. Before we say goodbye, is there anything you want to say to your friends in the community or anything else that you might have for me?
Yeah, well, I just want to say to the people that are out there to, get out there and challenge yourself. Try blind hockey, try another para sport, encourage other people, nothing bad can ever become of stepping out there and trying out a new sport just to see what you think of it. So, and I just also wanted to say thank you very much for having me on the show. It's been a pleasure to be here speaking with you, Nico. Keep up the good work.
Thank you, Dustin, and you as well. Keep up the great work out there with the Central Alberta Bullseye Blind Hockey Team. It's been a great 4th episode of the Canadian Blind Hockey Podcast, and it's been a busy one. A big thank you to David, Mike, Candice, and of course Dustin for their contributions to this week's episode and the sport of blind hockey. Folks, thanks for tuning in to today's show. Remember to check out CanadianBlindHockey.com for all the latest, and stay safe. We'll see you next time. Canadian Blind Hockey programs are supported by AMI, CNIB Foundation, Daniel Family Foundation, Electra Health, Mannion, Parasport TV.